Hi everyone and welcome. This is your Aries full moon video, this time for all 12 signs. If you haven't already seen my earlier video about the general overview of the Aries full moon, then go back to that because it has a really much bigger and broader picture of what's going on right now, which is a lot. And it's really focused on healing energy as well as this energy of really needing to make a deep change. So do go ahead and listen to that. And particularly if you happen to be either Aries or Libra, sun, moon, or rising, it's particularly impactful for you, but it really applies to all of us because Aries and Libra exist somewhere in everybody's chart. So here are my interpretations now for each of the 12 signs, and I hope you find this helpful. Aries, this is happening in your first house. That's quite significant because it's all about you, basically. And this is, again, why this earlier video that I did, which is a general overview, is really important for you. This axis between the self and other is very much your story in life. Relationships are huge for you, even though sometimes it doesn't really feel that way. Maybe you tend to go your own way quite a lot of the time. But nonetheless, the underlying need for you is to be in relationship. It's part of what you're here for. And that balancing your sort of tendencies to go it alone or tendencies to look after your own needs first with the needs of others is a big story in your life. So this is where it's showing up right now. How's that going for you? The other aspect of this is Chiron is on the moon in your first house. You've had Chiron in your first house since May 2018, so this is not new, but certainly this is impactful because it's right here on the moon. And when Chiron is on the moon, there can be a lot of issues around relationships anyway, especially things that are tied to emotional connections. It's especially true now because it's right opposite Venus. Venus is connected to the sun in this full moon, and Chiron is connected to the moon, and they're all opposing each other. So that's really adding to this theme of relationships and what's going on there. Some healing that might be coming from a realization around attitudes you might be holding from long, long ago, things of coming from childhood or early education where you may have felt insecure about yourself, or you may have been told that you weren't good enough. This will be particularly true for those of you born in the early 70s. So if you are born somewhere between sort of late 71 and maybe early 73, you're currently having roughly your Chiron return, and you will have already had that if you're born before then, and it's coming. Don't worry if you're born after that. So it's usually between sort of ages 49, 50, 51. And that's really all about recognizing how patterns, emotional, psychological patterns from childhood have kind of run you underground or sort of in the behind the scenes of your life, and that can hold you back in many ways. Chiron is also about self-sabotage, so it could be that things that you believe about yourself are holding yourself back or preventing you from really connecting in relationship. So you've had Jupiter in your first house as well since May, also middle of May 2022. That probably has been quite helpful in terms of giving you a fresher perspective on yourself. That happens every 12 years, so it's not a really common thing, and it certainly gives you a big boost. But Jupiter's going retrograde right now, so it looks like that whatever has been kind of recognized, or what you're indulging in, what you're planning for, is under reconsideration at the moment, and that could bring you to a point where you won't really have the answers. You won't maybe get that sort of sense of vim and vigor or the confidence that you need to get going forward until Jupiter comes back into your sign on the 20th of December. All I can say about this is that this is really a good time to resolve issues that might be around relationships, and in particular relationships with women, because this is Venus, and it's Venus in Libra. And the moon is always something to do with women, can be around mother as well. This could be about healing issues with the mother, but that I would have to see that in your own chart to see if that's really relevant for you. Now, our Venus in the 7th house is always very strong. Venus in Libra in the 7th house is even stronger. But our dear Venus is with the Sun, which isn't strong in Libra. But also, anytime a planet gets close to the Sun, and she's about 3 degrees off, that's pretty close. And so it means that she's being sort of blinded by the light of the Sun. It's under the Sun's beams. It means that the planet is not really fully expressing itself. And we'll have to wait until after this full moon, when the Sun starts to move quicker away from Venus, that she can probably give you the benefits that we're really hoping for here. But I think it's still worth realizing that Venus is trying to bring harmony somehow into your relationships. This has been a big issue for you as well, because friendships and groups and who you get benefit from, who you network with, potentially also money that you might earn from things that you do, has been perhaps challenged. Probably, I'm going to say probably challenged, because Saturn has been in your 11th house, and that's been since the 21st of December. No, sorry, about the 17th of December 2020. So it's already been a while. Saturn is retrograde right now, and it happens to be squaring Uranus, which is in your 2nd house of money. So that's why I'm bringing in this money picture, because it looks like something's not easy somehow, or changing rapidly around money. It looks like there's some need to resolve issues of finances or money, or there's a new way of earning money. It doesn't have to be bad, by the way. It can be that there's a new thing coming, which would be a great thing, something new and inspiring. And especially something that may have jumped out at you sort of late July, early August, where things may have shifted, or a realization around all of that may have shifted. So all I can say right now is that it's a really good time to not engage financially with friends, if you can avoid it. It's not a good time for business partnerships with friends. Doesn't mean you can't make business partnerships in general, but just try not to blend those two things, because that may not come out the way that you would have hoped. You also, since the 20th of August, have Mars in your 3rd house of community and your cousins and siblings, and it's also where we learn stuff. It's skills that you might have, and commercial activities as well. So if you are in business or working for yourself, for example, which would be a pretty typical Aries thing to do, your ruler Mars is going through the house of business. And so this could be a very, very good time for you, really active time. Just be careful when Mars is in the 3rd house. It can have a sharp tongue, and so it can give you a little bit of combativeness. Not to say that Aries isn't familiar with that already, but that you might find yourself, getting into struggles that are honestly not worth it in the long run. So beware. It's there until the 25th of March. So we got to deal with this Mars come hell or high water in Gemini for that length of time. It doesn't really behave super helpfully in Gemini, because it's all over the place. So yeah, hold your horses, Aries, and don't go rushing into things. Take your time. I think shifting will happen after not only the retrogrades have ceased, in terms of the Saturn retrograde, which it ends as of after the 23rd of October, and then the Jupiter retrograde, which ends after the 24th. The 28th of October. So anyway, then we're fully into the eclipse seasons by then. I'll talk about that in another video, but this is not the time to try and establish anything fixed or permanent. That probably suits you, Aries, so that's not really a big issue for you, I'm sure. But there's a lot in flux between now and late November. So do hang on in there, and allow things to kind of go with the flow for now. Carry on learning for sure with Mars there. This is a really good use of your time, learning new skills that might help you develop whatever commercial or other activity that has you engaging in your community and in the world. And there's a lot of big change on the horizon, completely impossible to imagine And that's kind of the story for these next 2 months, which will be quick and volatile, to say the least, not only collectively, but in our individual lives. So enjoy the ride, because Aries, you thrive on change, and it's coming. So I'll speak to you in the next video. Taurus, this is happening in your 12th house. This Aries full moon is in the place where you might be realizing that you are your own worst enemy. This could be a realization around ways in which you kind of undermine yourself and your own happiness. This can also have something to do with the realization that allows you to recover quickly from some health issue, or can help you with some kind of potentially psychological issue that you might have been dealing with in a really positive way. Certainly with Chiron there in the 12th, and it's been there since May of 2018, you will have already been kind of looking at all of these things around issues of not only just what you might do to, undermine your own well-being, but also loss in general, loss of friends, potentially even permanent loss, where people are leaving your life and dying, and you're having to grapple with those big questions of life and death. With Jupiter there in that same house, the 12th house, since mid-May of this year, that may have felt a little bit lighter, may have felt a little easier. Jupiter is now retrograding back into your 11th house. That can give you a little bit of a sense of reflection on all of the things that have gone on, certainly since May when Jupiter entered. And that is going to probably find a resolution only when Jupiter comes back into the 12th house by the 20th of December. So what you're looking at now is really an opportunity for you to understand yourself deeply, potentially healing these childhood wounds that may have you, worried about death, or, issues of loss, self-sabotage. Taurus can be very stubborn, so not easy to make you change. But I would say also, having said that it's not easy to make you change, you've had Uranus in your first house now since also roughly the same time as Chiron has been in your 12th. And so May 2018, April, May. And that's changing you, whether you like it or not. So especially because now the North Node since January has also been in your first house. So wow, Taurus, if you don't change now, I just don't know when you ever will. But this is an opportunity for you to recognize some of the things that might have you feeling down on yourself, or in general in life, are coming from your own stuff, basically. This is also potentially the house where we in the 12th house, where the moon is the house where we have friends, relationships, business relationships included, in faraway places, long distant places. And so there can be some things around that, around things from far away, and people who live abroad and so on. So maybe there's something also coming there, a realization around that. So the full moon is always when we become aware of something, and this is bringing that awareness to your 12th house. 12th house is also, aside from all the escapism and stuff that I was alluding to, it's also where we sleep. And so this is with Chiron there particularly. This probably has been an area for you the last 4 years where there may have been a tendency to prefer to sleep rather than face what's going on, or just kind of drift away again into something that is not really constructive. This is really being highlighted because Chiron is right on top of the moon at this point. All of this is opposing Venus and the Sun in your 6th house of everyday life. So it looks like actually there's a lot of potential for things to go very well in terms of your day-to-day work and day-to-day habits and so on. The only tricky part of that is that when Venus is so close to the Sun, we don't really get the best of her, and she's kind of tracking the Sun for the next little while. So I think it's also worth keeping in mind that you might feel tired right now. It's okay, and indulge in resting if that's available to you. But also, if you do have any niggling health issues, this is the time to consult about that, because it's also highlighting the possibility of finding solutions for that. So that's pretty good. If you've got children or if you've got plans around some kind of business, or if you do have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, Mercury has been in your fifth house at this time in the full moon chart. Mercury is opposing Neptune. So Mercury in the fifth opposing Neptune in the 11th can be that you're not really seeing very clearly stuff around either your children or plans for them or their own plans. But there seems to be a lot of busyness around there, a lot of conversation. If this is to do with business and money, then I would suggest that you just take a little care. Definitely, I would say you're one of the signs that I'm telling not to do business with friends at this point. Keep that separate and see when the air is clear, sort of towards December and January, where things become much more clear, and then you will be able to do that. Otherwise, I mean, it's not that you shouldn't have business partners in general, but just not with friends. And also recognizing that perhaps some of your dreams or ambitions and goals are really in need of revision. Maybe they're not realistic, or maybe they're not really what you think they are. Maybe they're not even as bad as you think they are. It doesn't mean that you're dreaming the positive stuff. It could also be that you're dreaming negative stuff and it's not also accurate. So just keep that in mind. I'm saying, especially in general, that people should also keep in mind what they're hearing in terms of the news, what's going on around the world, that we're not really in a position to trust what's being said. And it's, I don't want to make you paranoid or make you feel like you can't trust people around you. It's just that this is a time where people kind of are believing what they want to believe. This is really reflected in this full moon. We're in that sort of era now as well, but the full moon is really pulling that up. And so all of this energy around this time, to know more, listen to my earlier video that I did on the general overview for this full moon. It's just not a time to fully rely on facts. So rely on instead on your instinct, which I think with Chiron in the 12th is probably developing really, really well. And I think you'll find that your instincts are pretty good. Now you've got Mars in your house of money as well. So there's somehow a lot of thought and energy going into money. That can be also with stuff, just your belongings. Maybe thinking about what to do with your stuff, or wanting to acquire new things. Now with Mars in the second house, there can be an acquisitive kind of nature, and you by nature as a Taurus like your stuff, you like to hold on to things. So just be careful, because as Mars goes retrograde, it's going to go retrograde at the end of October, and until the 12th of January, so quite a while. You're probably going to regret some of the things that you might think are really important right now. So hang on, unless you really need the stuff. You probably don't need too much. You probably don't need as much as you think you might need. And if it's an extravagance, if it seems kind of on the limit of what you can afford, then definitely wait until after January. This is not really a time to be indulging, because you won't be satisfied later on. So just to give you that heads up, this is something that's kind of coming over the next few months, but it's highlighted already in this Aries full moon. Taurus, you're also under a bit of pressure in terms of your work or social status, your career. Maybe things are looking different and you're not quite sure how to go forward with all of that. Now, when Saturn is going to turn direct, it's going to station direct on the 23rd of October, just around the time of the eclipses, by the way. There's going to be a renewed energy there for you. So don't worry too much about trying to figure this out right now. I think, to be honest, none of us have a clue what's going on right now. And so just hang in there until November, December. I honestly should say that the best thing is to wait until after November anyway, because that will be out of the eclipse sort of shadow, or the eclipse impact zone, where things are going to be quite turbulent and probably changing quite rapidly anyway. So if you think that your work hasn't been panning out for you, or something's, in the way that your role in society, the way that you enter into the world is not really feeling comfortable for you, don't worry. It's all programmed to change. So Enjoy a little bit of a rest right now, Taurus. Certainly well deserved. With Mars in the second house, you need all the rest you can get. And so I'll speak to you again in the next video. Thanks for listening. Gemini, this is happening in your 11th house. So it looks like there might be some realizations around your goals, or maybe you're revising your goals or having new goals that you're considering. This can also be things about friends or groups that you associate with, some networking issues. Your sort of future vision might be questioned or challenged at this time, or it's just highlighting where perhaps you may have had a feeling that you let yourself down or you've been wasting time in certain ways. Now you're kind of picking up steam again. Now you're really going to get going. And with Mars in your first house, since it's been there since 20th of August, that's going to really help you. It's there all the way through till the 25th of March. So really, you've got a really good bunch of energy to work with here. In terms of your own personal dynamism, just be careful not to bite off more than you can chew, which is a little bit of a Gemini friendly flaw. And with Mars in the first house, that can be, even more so. So Mars in Gemini tends to want to be everything, everywhere, all the time. So just pay attention to that. Don't overdo it. Mars is also challenged at this time. Your first house is challenged by your career house, where we have Neptune in a square energy. And so it can be that you're not really seeing very clearly what activity to do or what effort to put into your work. Or even your status, that can be the house of marital status, for example, social status. Maybe you're unclear about that, or there's some kind of thing that's just in your way and you need to kind of work on that. That may not be clear to you until till the end of this year, or even, in fact, until Mars goes direct again on the 12th of January. So coming back to the full moon here is in the axis between the 11th house, which is your social life, your friends, your acquaintances, and also potentially how you earn money as well. That might be another issue around this time. And it's in opposition to the 5th house, which can be about business and commerce. It can be, if you're an entrepreneur, a very important house for entrepreneurs. It can also be the house of children, so there may be something going on with your children. And so maybe some of your notions of future plans or what the future is going to look like has to do with your own children, if you have them, or even potentially the idea of having children. If you're at that age where you're thinking, should I have either a child or another child? This might be something that's coming up for you, and you're kind of looking at that. Definitely not to say that you should not, because with Venus and the Sun moving through the 5th house, that's a great time to conceive. It's actually quite energizing, and soon we'll be trining Mars. So if that's on the agenda, certainly jump in. But nonetheless, the Venus and the Sun moving so close together means that Venus is under the beams, that she's not giving us all the energy that she can when she's in her own sign of Libra. And so, although things can be very good there, it might still require a little bit of work, or it requires a little bit of negotiation around maybe understanding a little bit more where you fit into this picture, and possibly even where your emotions, maybe old emotions coming from childhood, might be the thing that is the obstacle. This is also, by the way, the house of love. The 5th house is the house of romance and love. 11th house up there again being your goals and hopes and dreams. So with Chiron on the moon, it can be that maybe you're not really seeing clearly how, maybe your own vision for things has been kind of holding you back. It's potentially, I would have to see your natal chart, but it's potentially something that you're reflecting on right now. Is this the right person, or is this what I really want in my life, and so on. With Jupiter there, I would say that question has been uppermost, but yet more pleasant, and maybe more support coming from people, more support from friends and acquaintances, sort of potentially really well-off people as well, people who are doing well for themselves, or at least helping you to do well for yourself. Jupiter's now retrograde, however, and it's moving back. It's been retrograde since the end of July, so this is not new, but it's moving slowly back into your 10th house of career. So if there's this issue, if there's this question about what to do, and am I doing the right thing, or am I putting my efforts in the right place around career, I think you'll definitely have a sense of that as Jupiter moves back into Pisces on the what is it now? The 24th of the month, the 24th, no, the 28th. So Jupiter's moving into Pisces on the 28th of October, and it will be there until the 20th of December. So you've got a bit of time again to really juice up your career, juice up your status. Is it like, should I, shouldn't I? And then maybe all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, yes, this is a great time to get into a relationship. And therefore you kind of get the answers that you want, but only a little bit later. I'm telling people to kind of hang on. Don't jump into things, especially with Mars in the first house, Gemini. This is a chance for you to practice restraint. Hold on, and don't jump into things right now while things are not that clear, unless you're already on a pretty clear path. So just give yourself time and slow things down until probably the second half of November or even later, because we're entering into eclipse season, which I'll talk about in an upcoming video, but it's not time for real clarity or stability, which probably is okay with you, Gemini, because you love that as a mutable sign. You love jumping around all over the place and doing new things and different things. But nonetheless, even for Geminis, this is possibly going to be a destabilizing time. Yeah, so take good care of yourself, and I think that you'll find that this moon is going to give you some answers with regards to potential love affairs or business issues, or maybe around your kids. And this is where I think you'll find that most of your energy is best used, let's say, by reflecting on these things and not necessarily acting impulsively. Don't worry if things don't appear to be going your way. Things will shift very, very soon. Go with the flow, Gemini. See you in the next video. Bye. Cancer, my fellow Cancers. I'm a Cancer rising and moon as well, so I'm feeling your pain these days. It's our full moon is happening in the 10th house. That's career issues, and there certainly seems to be a number of things that are highlighted around work and careers. Social status is another aspect of this. With Chiron there's been a lot of questioning since already May 2018 of what the heck am I doing? So we've had the good fortune of having Jupiter there also since mid-May of 2022, and that has brought a certain amount of novelty or expansion in that area. Maybe what you could describe as enthusiasm, although maybe the results are not really quite where you want them. And Jupiter is also moving retrograde since the end of July. So we haven't really been able to use that Jupiter in the way that we would have wanted to. Things don't seem to be kind of as easy as you would have thought with Jupiter in the 10th house. But good news is that Jupiter will be stationing direct at the end of October on the 28th. It's going, not stationing direct, correction. It's going to be moving into Pisces at the end of October on the 28th, and it's going to be stationing direct on the 24th of November. And so that big shift is also going to be an opportunity to revise your sort of worldview and have a sense of what it is that your purpose is. What does it feel like now? What is my purpose in the thing that I want to do? Am I understanding things clearly? Do I need to reassess my sort of beliefs around things? This might also be a desire to learn, maybe from great teachers, or to go back to a higher learning of some kind. And so that questioning is already here as the seed is being planted right now. But these next 2 months are not an easy time to make any solid fixed plans. So just go slowly, let yourself do all the questioning and enjoy the questioning as you build up all kinds of information, potentially allies as well. And then when Jupiter goes forward, as of the end of November roughly, then you'll have this clarity going forward, and your career energy will start to pick up again in December when Jupiter goes back into that 10th house. So don't despair, Cancer. We can always hope. The moon, by the way, is very important for Cancers because it rules Cancer. And this is the axis, the 10th house, 4th house is the axis that's traditionally connected to the moon, Cancer in the 4th house, and Capricorn in the 10th house. And so that relationship between home and work and where do I feel secure? Have I got security? This is what's being highlighted at this full moon for Cancers. The emphasis on this is because that Chiron is connected to the moon in the 10th house, it's also opposing Venus, which is connected to the sun in the 4th house. So issues around home, are things working out at home? Is this the right home? Do I want to be in this home? All of these issues, including property, should I buy property, or even just questions around your family, your security, something like that. Have we got enough to get us through the winter? Are things going well? So it looks like somehow there's some support here for Cancer. Venus in the 4th is a very strong angular position, and that also brings some good help, although Venus is unfortunately not as helpful as she could be because she's so close to the sun. The sun is not letting her fully show up, but nonetheless, it's a benefic. Venus is doing well in the sign that she rules, which is Libra in your 4th house. And so I think that especially after this full moon, things are going to start to pan out in a way that you can start to see results more favorably. Now you've got in the house of communication, you've got Mercury there opposing Neptune in your house of higher mind and thinking and higher education, foreigners, foreign lands, and so on. I think it's a time where you want to beware of what you believe, because with Neptune in the 9th house, it's a bit dodgy. It's hard to really fully trust. The 9th house is higher knowledge. It's also your dharma, your purpose. Where am I going in this life? What are my plans for myself? What do I feel my life purpose to be? And so because Neptune is retrograde at this time, we're already not seeing things clearly because it's Neptune there, but we're also not really able to act upon it. It's a thick fog. Neptune is a fog, and Neptune retrograde is a thick fog, and it's right opposing Mercury, our thinking, and so on. So it's really not an easy time, I think, to be really clear. The other aspect of this is we've got Mars in the 12th house in Gemini. Mars in the 12th house can be disturbing some peace of mind, for example, since the 20th of August when it was first moving in there. And Mars in the 12th can stir up issues around, it can be issues around big questions, life and death sort of questions, but also loss. So being acutely aware of loss, or even having a sense, 12th house is also the house of hidden enemies, having a sense that maybe the people you have relied on, or the things that you previously thought you could rely on, are not super reliable, and that we have to include ourselves in that, by the way. So the 12th house is our house of self-undoing as well. So when Mars isn't there, we might just be crashing full steam ahead into things that are actually not that good for us. One of which is distraction. With Mars and Gemini, it can be all about overdoing things, being distracted, being just kind of not really on the ball. So beware of that, because it can undermine you and all the things that you'd really like to achieve. So the last thing I want to point out is that the 11th house of hopes, wishes, and dreams is still being affected by the North Node and Uranus in there, and that is squaring, Uranus at least is squaring Saturn in the 8th house of shared resources. So definitely there's some tension around money issues, shared resources. It feels like things are kind of thin on the ground in terms of help from others, or money coming in from others. Hang on, because Saturn is going to go direct on the 23rd of the month. So then things should start to pick up clarity, and certainly by January, and from January through March, that will resolve in a way that allows you to really sort that out. These are two money houses, and quite important to recognize where we need to put our ducks in a row. So good luck at this full moon, Cancer, and let me know how you're doing in the comments below. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Leo, this is happening in your ninth house, and that's not such a bad place to have a moon. When the full moon shines its light in these different houses, it's asking us to become aware of something, become aware of the results of something that we may have been focusing on in the background, but now we need to bring our attention to. So, what is your life purpose? That could be one of the questions going that are highlighted right now for you. Maybe there's a sense of having to revise that, or having maybe a moment of self-doubt. I mean, even Leos have self-doubt. It happens, yes. And that questioning, that moment of questioning can be right now, where you have this question around potentially, what am I doing with my life? And this could also be just questions around study plans. What should I do? Should I go back to uni, or should I go maybe learn some, life philosophy that's going to help me become more resilient in these times? And so this is potentially also just an awareness of the worldview that you've held up until now, and having a look at that. Is that working for you? Equally, this is a house of foreigners. It's a house of, it's quite a lucky house, actually, which is why I think Leo is going to enjoy this full moon more than many others, I think. But it's a lucky house, and so maybe you're finding also that you've got a lot of opportunities to expand yourself and work with other people. Now, with Jupiter being in there since mid-May, that has certainly been the case, but it's been retrograde since the end of July, 28th of July. And so it's going to turn direct only on the 24th of November. But before it does so, it's going to enter into Pisces again, your eighth house, on the 28th of October. And so when it does that, sorry, is it 28th of October? Let me just double check that. Yep, it is. When it does that, it's going to go back into your house of money, shared resources, money that you hold with other people, or investments, or it can be payoffs and some kind of insurance issues and so on. And so things that may have already come up before in the first part of the year, let's say the first 4 or 5 months of the year, are going to be kind of touched on again. There's a revision of all of that, what's been going on there. And that will somehow find a resolution. It looks like a good one, because Jupiter is really strong in Pisces, and that's your eighth house. In the meantime, just at this time of the full moon, you've got Mercury in the second house again of money, opposing Neptune, which is in that eighth house of money already and has been since 2011. That's also, by the way, the house of marriage. So there can have been some issues of lack of clarity around marriage, or lack of clarity around, how to deal with shared resources in general. But now at this particular time, it's in an opposition. It's a wide opposition, but still worth mentioning, because that can also bring about a lack of clarity in terms of communication around those things, how to manage those things. So this is not a good time to negotiate, I would think, especially if you have to negotiate something around a will, or around I don't know, a divorce settlement, or around insurance issues or something. If you can just wait, just hang on a couple of weeks if possible, and otherwise at least hang on until the energy of this full moon has passed, and Mercury has now moved into your third house, which is coming very soon. It's a matter of days. So just try not to jump to any conclusions around those money issues. It looks like also relationship issues, career issues have been challenging. And that, of course, that Saturn has been in your house of relationships since the 20th or 18th or something of December 2020. And so that's a big deal for you these years. This has been a very big process. It's going to end, by the way, on the 7th of March, 2023. So hang in there. When Saturn goes through the house of relationship, there's a lot of negotiation going on. There's a lot of change. There's maybe restriction around relationship. It can also be that you just say, I'm just kind of done with this, whether it be, business partnerships, or marriage partners, or, or good friends. These are important relationships. This is not about your kids, by the way, if you have children. It's about people on your level. It's peer relationships. It can be also people you consult with. So it's like, I'm so done with that doctor. I don't want to see him again, or her. And so this is all being kind of churned up now. Saturn is still moving retrograde, and it will continue to move retrograde all the way through till, let me just check that date, till the 23rd of October, at which time it starts to move forward again. And so if you have issues that are not clear around partners, business partners, work, things that might affect you in your marriage, for example, your marital status, hang in there. This is not a good time to make decisions about that. Just wait, at the very least, wait a couple of weeks. And I'm kind of telling everybody it's ideal to wait until mid to late November, where much of the fluctuating and quite disturbing energy of the eclipses is also going to be fading away. We'll see better what the results of all that is. So one last thing is that you've got Mars in the 11th house. So Mars in the 11th house has you very busy and active in communities that you feel are important, maybe networks of friends or political groups or groups and associations that you share a lot of things in common with. Mars in the 11th can also mean that you're working hard for money, because that's also the house of earnings from what you do, from your career, earnings from the thing that you do in this life. And so there's a lot of effort going in there. And that can be a good thing, but Mars in Gemini is also a little bit scattered. So it's a good time to question, am I putting the effort in the right place? Am I doing the thing that I should be doing in the right way? So importantly, your ruler is the sun, and the sun, which is of course in opposition to make a full moon, is connecting with Venus right now. So there's another message here about money, and that is not an exact trine with Mars, but it's by house, it's trining where Mars is there. And so the story is emphasized there. If you're in business at all, this is definitely a message around commerce and business. So there can be some realizations that help you to move the needle a little bit in terms of business. And this can also, again, be the axis, the third, ninth house axis can also be about learning and studying. And so maybe there's something that you're deciding to do in that regard. Third house is also where we find skills. And so maybe you're finding that your skills are suddenly taking on a new importance, and that you can actually do something with them and share that perhaps with the world, share that by teaching something. And this realization might just be kind of dawning on you. So do give it a bit of time, let these realizations come, and act on them only when you feel that there's more clarity around things. I don't think this is the moon for clarity. So good luck with all of that, Leo. Virgo, this is happening in your 8th house of shared resources. And this is about managing money and other stuff that you might share with other people. And so there's something highlighted here about how that's working out for you. That can be that you're realizing that something needs to change, or it can also be that you're realizing that you have been your own worst enemy in that regard. We've got Chiron on this moon. Now, Chiron in Aries is often, anyway, a signature around, what it is that you might be doing that is based on a feeling of inadequacy or insecurity about your own self. You're lacking self-esteem, feeling like you're a bit browbeaten. Chiron on the moon is very emotional. So you might be actually pulling yourself down when it's not real. It's not really the case. It's just a feeling that you have about things. And all of this in opposition to Venus and the sun in the 2nd house. Now, Venus and the sun in the 2nd house is pretty awesome. It's a really nice feeling, gives you a good feeling of confidence usually, and a feeling of assertion, in a positive way. It's a feeling of can do. This is also a lot of energy around money. Again, this is the money axis for Virgos. 2nd house, 8th house. So this is about money and your own self-worth. The 2nd house, where the sun and Venus are really boosting that for you. Maybe you're having new opportunities to earn money, or you're starting to see your value or the value of your stuff in a different way. You do have your ruler in the 1st house. So this is quite nice, because your ruler by retrograde came back into your 1st house for another quick visit. So for the next few days, enjoy Mercury there in the 1st house. However, it is opposing the 7th house, where we find Neptune, and that can cloud things with regards to relationships. It's not allowing you to be clear in relationships, or that the person that you're hoping or wishing or are in relationship with is not clear with you. So that's one of the challenges with Neptune in the 7th, is that we don't see others clearly. And then in the same way, others are not seeing us particularly clearly. So We can, especially with Virgo rising, there can be a tendency to, well, I'd say perhaps Virgo of all types, but there is a tendency to, want to paint that perfect picture. But, this is life. We're humans this time around, and there is no perfection. So that can also amount to this kind of feeling of disappointment. And that can come back to this full moon in the eighth house next to Chiron, which is kind of can be an element of disappointment in oneself. And that's in the house of marriage. It's in the house of what we share with another, the benefits we get from being in a relationship, long-term commitments. So don't get down on yourself, Virgo. These things will pass. They are passing energies. This is not permanent. And it's definitely something to bear in mind, that if you're overly fussy on the details, you might actually bypass something that's extremely beautiful. So the other aspect of this is that you've got Saturn in your sixth house, and Saturn in the sixth house can show up some medical or health issues. Now, for a Virgo, that's I don't want to worry you with that, because I know that that can be a preoccupation. You're very health conscious, which can be a good thing in good doses. But Saturn there is telling us that there not only is there potential for things to be a bit challenging there, but it's also showing you that you're capable of doing the hard work to overcome. And now Saturn is retrograde, so it may feel like whatever is bothering you is not lifting, it's not moving, but just give it some time. By the 23rd of October, Saturn will be moving out of that zone back into direct motion all the way through till March 7th. And so with that in mind, you know that you're really on the path to healing if there has been something obstructing that in the last little while. These are what I consider to be the most important factors for Virgo. Keeping in mind as well that Saturn is still squaring the Uranus, which is in your ninth house, where the North Node also is. And so again, there can be this change of direction, or a sense of changing your life goals for yourself, your sense of life purpose, and even that might touch on higher learning and what am I doing? Should I be learning this? Or this can also be about religion or spirituality, where you're kind of changing or moving the needle a little bit on that in that regard. And your health, your mental or physical health, might actually be holding that back. It might be kind of making you feel more gloomy and that there's less opportunity. So once again, I just want to reinforce that you should wait and just give it some time and allow these energies, these retrograde energies, to turn direct again, where you're going to find a lot more upliftment. This is especially going to be true because Jupiter, by the 28th of October, is going to be moving back into your house of relationship. That's going to boost you a little bit in relationship. And that's going to be all the way through till 20th of December. So you've got a good 2 months almost to really enjoy reflecting on and working with relationships once again. That might even bring you a bit of healing around a relationship that had somehow collapsed between January and mid-May. Now you have a second chance in a way, or there's some energy that can change that relationship. And then as Jupiter moves back where it is right now, as of the 20th of December, you're going to have Jupiter back in the eighth house of shared resources, and looks like you'll really benefit from connection with other people in some way once again. So good luck with this. Oh, one last thing as well. So I almost forgot that you've got Mars in the 10th house. It gives you lots of ambition, lots of energy right now. Just keep in mind that this Mars is squaring Neptune, so it may not be super clear who you should be dealing with or how. And it can also be that there might be a challenge in terms of your sense of direction or your sense of drive or purpose here. Just don't run yourself in circles, because Mars in the 10th in Gemini can have that effect, where you're a little bit all over the place and not really planting seeds that are durable. So take your time. Don't get everything done in a day. It's not necessary. We've got 2 months of rapid change ahead of us. So join the club if you're feeling not certain about things, if you're in any doubt, and just kind of chill for a little while, and then you'll see that things pan out a lot better later on. Good luck with all that, Virgo, and I'll see you in the next video. Libra, this is in your seventh house, your favorite place. This full moon is happening in that first house and seventh house axis. So while the sun is in your sign, you've got Venus right alongside the sun, and she and the sun are in opposition to the moon and Chiron in your seventh house of others. So this is a big deal for you. I really want you to listen to the overview that I did. You'll get a lot more information in depth about the symbolism there in that axis and ways to work with that, especially through healing that, because we're talking about Chiron here. So it looks like there's something to resolve, potential healing around relationships, or a sense of perhaps where you may have dropped the ball in relationships, or where you may realize that some of your old childhood programming or your own self-esteem or lack of self-esteem is the thing that is tripping you up, and you're starting to see that. It can be that other people in your life are working through healing, and that you're having to deal with that as well, that you're having to take on things with regards to other people's own healing work. That's part of your sort of life modus operandi as well, because you do often take on the problems of other people. So again, that maybe that question is, should I be taking on the problems of this person or any other people? Look at that. You've got a good opportunity now to see how things are going. So use these days to really examine things, like just look around at your life and see what's working, what's not in that regard. You've got Jupiter also in the seventh house, and that's been there since mid-May. So with Jupiter in the seventh house, already there's quite a lot going on in the house of relationships. So you're busy with regards to that. And that, by the way, Jupiter will continue to be there, barring a little dip into Pisces. It's going to be there until I think it's late May, mid-May, 16th of May, 2023. So what this Jupiter there is definitely calling your attention. And when Jupiter then at the end of this month goes back into Pisces, so on the 28th of October, Jupiter will move back into Pisces for a couple of months. Then the question is more around your day-to-day work and health issues. So for now, really keep your focus on the relationship, and later you might find out how things can be improved through day-to-day basic lifestyle stuff, or how you organize your time, how you organize your day. That might actually be where your relationship will find more benefit. The other aspect of this is that you've got Saturn in the fifth house of children, and Saturn is squaring Uranus in the eighth house of shared resources. Now, the fifth house is also love affairs. It's also joie de vivre. It's all the nice things in life. It can also be sort of gambling as well. Not a good time to gamble when Saturn is in the fifth house, regardless of your chart. And Saturn there in this challenging relationship to the eighth house suggests that there's still tension there with regards to what you share with another. That's been changing, by the way, since May 2018 already. Lots of issues there around money and how you make it, or how you are sharing it with other people. So there might be something there that needs some kind of addressing, but it's not a really good time to do that. It's a good time to realize that it's not a good time to address it, or maybe things will happen for you in such a way that you don't actually have to do anything. It's all kind of changing around you, or your attitude is changing to that. And I think you probably won't be able to act upon that until Saturn starts to go direct again on the 23rd of October. So just give it some time. You might find that that things become clearer, or your sense of purpose and drive comes back after the 23rd. So keep in mind that Venus, your ruler, is in your first house. This is a lovely way to spend your birthday, and having Venus there all through the month is really going to uplift you. You're going to feel quite social, of course, not that you don't already, but especially so. And you'll probably be attractive to people. It's not about physical attractiveness. It's about just being pleasant and attractive, and somebody that people want to, connect with and relate to. And so if you are interested in socializing, well, it's a great month to get out there. And Venus is definitely supporting you in that. Although, again, with this understanding that there may be something that you're realizing around relationship, which is coming either from painful past experiences or from what's going on right now. And don't let that hold you back. So allow yourself to also, explore new opportunities, new relationships potentially at this time as well. Nonetheless, this axis between, this opposition here now between Venus, the Sun, the Moon, and Chiron symbolizes very much the axis of the feminine energy represented by Venus and the Moon, and the masculine energy, which is right there in the Sun. And so there's some potential to, also heal wounding around feminine energy, I should think. With Chiron on the Moon, that can also represent the mother. So this might even be, I would have to see your chart to be sure of that, but Chiron Moon often is influences of the mother. And that might be the thing that's holding you back. It might be the thing that you've internalized by your own mother that is affecting the way that you are relating to other people. Then the other aspect of this that's interesting in terms of this moon is that you've got Mars, which is in your 9th house. So you're quite sort of focused on being driven outwardly towards your sense of purpose in life, having a strong sense of purpose. That's going all the way through from August 20th of this year through till the 25th of March of next year. So it's a little more than 7 months in that house. And this is very much to do with being active. Mars in the 9th house is very, very active. So it's going to be a busy period. And this is trining you. So it's very, very favorable to you. The only thing to be aware of is not to take on too much, because you cannot always bite off more than you can chew with Mars in Gemini, particularly, and Mars in the 9th house also, which is very, very busy, very active. It's a good time to be physically active, and that burns off a lot of this energy. So you're not wasting energy running around kind of aimlessly. This is particularly the case right now, where you may not feel that your energy is really well utilized, or not really clear where you should be putting your energy, between the sense of what your purpose is and what you do every day, because you've got Neptune in that house of what you do every day, and it's been there for a long time already, since 2011, March 2011, but still it's in a square, in a challenging relationship now between this Mars and Neptune, which is suggesting that what it is that you should be doing, what actions you should be taking, are not super clear to you at this time. Again, I am giving everybody the same advice: just slow it down. Don't really worry about these things right now at this full moon. Take on the realizations, understand the lessons, and then start acting on them from the inside out. And that should come naturally to you, Libra, but don't forget yourself in the equation. And again, go back and listen to the video that I did a few days ago, where I pointed out the real deep meaning of this moon, and how we can work with that healing energy. So I'll see you in the next video, Libra. Thanks for listening. Scorpio, this moon is happening in your 6th house. There's something coming up here about health and work, and this is not everybody's favorite house, for sure. This is a house of sort of drudgery and everyday sort of doings, but it is also in your chart ruled by your chart ruler Mars, and so you're quite dynamic in the day-to-day life. You're quite strong in your day-to-day life. I also want to point out that because you've got all of this energy there in the 6th house, if there is any kind of health issue coming up right now, pay attention to that and act upon it. So this is not a good time to wish things away. This is a time to do something about it. This might be what this is highlighting for you right now. The axis between the 12th house, where we find Venus next to the Sun, which is in opposition to the moon and Chiron, that's what gives us this full moon. This is where we can see sometimes energy of mental or physical instability or imbalance. And so if that's the case for you, this looks like a really good opportunity to improve things, or maybe that feeling is lifting already. Maybe there's a sense of, oh, okay, this is getting better. I can see things getting better. That can be a really pleasant boost for you. I think also at this time now, given that you've got the South Node moving through your 1st house, you've got Ketu there since the January of 2022 already, you're going through quite a revolutionary time, and of course so are your relationships, and so there's quite a lot changing. You are realizing certain things that you need to shed about yourself, certain things that are not really working out for you and that you need to let go of. And there's new stuff, potentially new people, certainly new ways of being in relationship that are occurring for you now in that seventh house, where such a lot is happening. Lots of busyness there. It's being challenged by your house of home, where Saturn is, and Saturn has been there since December 2020. And this particular full moon shows a square, the almost exact. It's still half a degree away, but close square between two slow moving planets, which is Saturn and Uranus. And that's been this tension that's been building up already for the last year and a half, which is by the end of October going to be sort of moving on, and we're not going to have to be dealing with that particular tension, although God knows there's more. But that tension between Saturn and Uranus is definitely very important for you, because it's happening in these angular houses. So it represents home and relationship, home relationship axis, or that can also be where Saturn is the energy of your deeper emotional security or your psychological sense of self. With Saturn there, it's hard to access that. With Saturn there, it can be a feeling of just not really being happy at home, potentially since December 2020, where there's been some kind of sense of not quite right. And so, be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and recognize that this is a period of change and transformation. This is the message with Saturn in Aquarius in your fourth house all this time, which is very strong at this particular moment because it's going retrograde. The message has been up until this point, and will continue to be till the end of March, that you are here to establish your own roots. You're establishing something quite foundational in your sense of self and in your own life. You're putting something out there that will be the bedrock for your life for many years to come. So again, it depends a bit your age and where this is, how you're experiencing this in your chart. But this is significant because whenever Saturn moves through the fourth house, we are really setting ourselves a foundation for the rest of our shift outward as the Saturn moves back up to the top of the chart. So these things that are happening here between the fourth and the seventh house, and that axis that is showing you something that might be going on between health, whether it be physical or mental health, and your everyday activities, and then the house of self-undoing, where we find Venus and the Sun, maybe pulling you away from things that are really practical, things that are really working in your favor. That's something to really reflect deeply on. And just to wrap it up, you've got Mars in your house of marriage. So it looks like there's quite a lot of intensity around potentially marriage. And that also is the house of everything shared with others, what you share in terms of money and just sharing in general. And it looks like there can be, at the very least, a lot of energy there, potentially very good for juicing up your marriage a little bit. But it can also be that there's conflict there, and especially if that is anything to do with an inheritance or something arising out of other similar types of shared resources. Good luck, Scorpio, with that. Have a good full moon and take good care of yourself until I see you again in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening in your fifth house. This full moon is in the house of children and your creativity, your self-expression. This is something that is quite pleasant, usually. With the moon and Chiron together in this place, it might be that you're sensing that there's something that is needing healing around this. So the bittersweet moment of realization, something around what it is that you love, your desires, the joys in life, and potentially around your children as well. Moon Chiron can represent the mother or mothering energy as well. And we have this in opposition to Venus and the Sun. So Venus, Moon is women in your life as well, something there maybe with regards to women. And this energy is also for sure coming around the money issues in life as well. Maybe this is about your kids' money that you are having to spend for your children. Maybe that's what's hurting right now. I don't know. The other thing is that with Venus and the Sun in your 11th house at this time, there can be quite a lot of help from your acquaintances and networks around you. It's not super close friends, but the people that you know. So it looks like whatever's going on is actually giving you a boost in that area, or you're getting a boost from that area of help from the wider public or from the networks that you keep. This is also a money house. The second house from the 10th house is the money that you earn from your career. Anything that you're doing out in the world. Venus being there is really beneficial. Venus, especially in Libra, is super beneficial. And so all very good news in general. But there can be some need to analyze what might be going on in terms of that fifth house. What that Chiron on the moon can be, that you recognize some issues of sabotage, some issues of maybe not doing the thing that's right for you. This especially, if I take the example of somebody who realizes that they might be wasting their talents and having a feeling of disappointment, not having expressed themselves. There's some issue around childhood where you feel like I can't possibly stand out. And yes, believe it or not, even Sagittarius feels shy at times, and that again depends on your chart. But so this can be that kind of reflection, like who am I, what do I do? So by the way, your ruler has been in this same part of your chart now since mid-May of this year, and so that's also been giving you a real boost in this area, a boost around children potentially, or a boost around your sense of self and creativity. But Jupiter has been moving backwards through this part since the end of July, and it continues to do so until it re-enters Pisces at the end of October on the 28th. But when it goes back into Pisces, then it's going to be picking up some strength as well. And so for a couple of months with Jupiter back in the fourth house, that can be a really nice time to feel more personal security, enjoy your family, enjoying energy around your home and children, for example, in terms of your family life. And then when Jupiter comes back into this fifth house, it's going to be really on fire. So that's going to be lighting you up even more. That will be as of the 20th of December. So the energy that might be having you feel a little doubtful right now, or a little bit less than comfortable with how things are going on, is going to pick up for sure probably around the time of your birthday. You'll start to feel that, certainly for the late born Sagittarius. Saturn is in your third house, and so there can be some issues with your siblings. Maybe there's something going on in their lives that is causing some trouble for you, or you're just at least worried for them. Or it can be that there's trouble between you, that there's a bit of strife there. Saturn is retrograde until the 23rd of October, so some of that won't find resolution until after then. And Saturn is also in a square, really challenging energy with your sixth house of everyday and everyday kind of lifestyle, everyday activities and work, all the drudgery. And that is where we find Uranus, where this is the last square building up right now. It's going to be exact towards the end of the month. Well, not exact, it's still 30 minutes of a degree away. So it's very, very close. It's not going to get any closer in 2022. So we're feeling this tension nonetheless all the way through October. This tension is between your community, possibly your communications, and your work, your everyday stuff, your everyday activities, your day-to-day choices. That can be work, and it can also be work colleagues. But if there has been some issues around that, you've probably been well aware of that since the beginning of 2021. This won't be new. It's just that there's maybe a buildup of tension around there that needs to be resolved at the time of this full moon. The other meaning of the third house is commerce. And so if you're a Sagittarius that runs your own business, then you might have a sense that business is a bit slow. Things are not really working super well for you now. And I think, again, that is going to be helped by Saturn moving direct eventually, but you'll already get that help from the Venus passage through your 11th house, which is all the way pretty much all of October. You have Mars in the house of relationships, so you've got to be a little bit careful. You might be either attracting people who have issues, anger issues, aggression issues, or you might be yourself feeling that way towards people in your circle. And these are inner circle people. These are either business partners or your relationship. This can also just be simple passion. It can be quite nice in the seventh house to feel that passion. Seventh house is certainly the intimacy that you would share with a person in a one-to-one relationship. And with Mars there in Gemini, things can be a little bit scattered. So you might find that there's just an awful lot going on around relationships right now in your life that might be distracting you potentially from your work or from things that you really need to get done. So be careful also, because that Mars is in a square to Neptune, which is in your fourth house. And so your emotions may be clouding issues around relationship, issues around what's going on. Maybe you're not seeing very clearly what is going on with a person, or or how you feel about things. And if that's the case, just give it a little time. This is not a good time to make permanent decisions unless you're really clear, and if you've got really good clarity. Not a great time for permanent decisions. And so give it some time, and know that that will shift over the course of the next 2 months as we go through not just this full moon phase, but also the 2 eclipses that are coming. And I'll be posting a video about that. So hang in there, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, Capricorn. This full moon is happening in your fourth house. Aries is the fourth house for you, Capricorn, and Libra is your 10th house. So it's that axis between home and work, your inner life and your outer life, if you like. The fourth house is also where we feel secure. And so there's something here happening that may be something to do with the realization of what makes you feel safe, literally at home, but even at home in your own skin. So the Chiron is there on this full moon, just within a couple of degrees. And as a result of that, we can see that there's quite a lot of energy here for understanding some kind of healing is necessary around this. This could be from anything from sort of psychological healing or a sense of emotional healing, if you like, and all the way to, healing a rift in the family, for example, or healing a sense of being a little bit cut off from the family. Mars does rule your fourth house, and so for one reason or another, family is cut off for Capricorn, especially Capricorn rising. That's kind of a feature. There's always some kind of a separation, some kind of a in the family somewhere. There's some kind of distance, let's say. Not always easy at home in the life of the Capricorn. And that can be growing up as well as in your current situation. And again, it depends on your chart to what degree that will be true, but some degree of emotional separation, emotional sort of distance, potentially even also, anger in the family, or anger from you towards the family, for example, that can also be there. And this can be something that is coming up for healing right now. Definitely since mid-May, there's been a lot going on at home for Capricorns because Jupiter has been there, and Jupiter is currently retrograde, just about to move out of your fourth house of home and into your third house of community by the 28th of October. And so when it does that, then you're going to be taking a little bit less energy into the home and maybe more energy into the community, or about siblings, for example. This can be around siblings, particularly younger siblings, and also could be cousins as well, or neighbors, what's going on in your community. That could also have you quite busy in terms of communication. Again, the third house is all things to do with commerce, communication, connecting with people in all different ways. And so Jupiter was there from January till mid-May. Whatever was going on then, especially April, May, is really, you're going back over that. You're going back to it, and you're kind of maybe having an opportunity to revise a few things, look at things in a different perspective. And then when the Jupiter moves back into your fourth house, then around the 20th of December, you'll probably have a much more clear idea of what that was all about. And now going forward with a lot more vigor, a lot more energy, from the 20th of December all the way through till the middle of May 2023, when Jupiter finally leaves again. So that's quite a lot of activity, not just at this full moon, but in a longer term for you, that you're looking at home and family and roots and what makes you feel secure. And you have to think about security in the largest sense. Do I need to own property to be secure? Do I need to have my family close by to feel secure? Do I need to have a certain amount of money in the bank to feel secure? This is something that's going to be uppermost in your mind in these next few days. This can also be an area where you start to realize that there's something that you might be dragging forward into your adult experience of life that might be quite related to childhood. It's not super relevant right now, although it's still active right now. And so you might notice that there's some wounded, experiences that could be psychological or emotional wounding that you may have experienced as a child, or in the way that you were raised, or in the way that you saw things growing up in terms of emotional connections. And now you're coming to this realization. So this is a very healing opportunity for you right now. This has for sure something to do with the energy of women and mother potentially, especially because the moon is in the fourth house. That definitely symbolizes the mother. So some healing around the mother with regards potentially to her as a person, whether or not she's still alive. There may be some emotional healing around that. And it could be also that she herself requires some kind of healing. That may be the way that this plays out for you. And it can also just be simply, again, that feeling of healing emotionally around issues of being mothered. Also a bit of a touchy area for Capricorns. Often there's a sort of a dryness often around the mother, especially if you're moon in Capricorn. If not dryness, then at least sort of strictness, that you maybe got what you needed, but not what you wanted out of that bond. And then the opposite end of that is in your career sector. So we have the Sun and Venus up there in your 10th house, very strong. In the angular houses, everything's very strong. So this is affecting you and all cardinal signs quite powerfully. And when Sun and Venus are in the 10th house, there's quite a lot of activity around work as well. So this is that maybe realization of some kind of work-life balance, or some kind of understanding of what it is that you need from your career to feel secure, for example. If there's some kind of movement going on in terms of changing jobs or changing, your attitude towards your work, this will be really beneficial, because whatever is being highlighted right now is something that has been building for a bit of time. And now you're really coming to this realization. And from that point on, you can do something about it. You can change the circumstances. And this might be also with regards to, what so many of us are doing now, is working from home, and how that's working for you. Is that something that you can continue to do? Is it something you want to do? That again, it depends a little bit on your personal chart, how that pans out. You also have Mars in your 6th house of work, everyday work. So you're clearly very, very busy at this time. That energy of Mars is really keeping you busy, active, engaged in your 6th house since the 20th of August. It's going to be there until the 25th of March. So that's 7 months, a little bit more. So quite a long time. And when Mars is in Gemini in the 6th house, it's a lot of dispersion. It's a lot of energy, a lot of maybe frenetic sort of busyness that may not be so good for your health. So be careful of your nervous health. Be careful of, overdoing it. Another thing, when Mars is in the 6th house, I always ask people to check for inflammation. Inflammation is the kind of a common, unfortunately, sort of regular situation for most people now, because stress also causes inflammation, lifestyle, diet, etc. And the best way to resolve that is through lifestyle changes. That's what the 6th house is all about, through diet and lifestyle. So Mars can maybe give you some energy in terms of determination, going through these changes that will really bring you better health. When Mars is in the 6th, also be careful, because again, that can indicate some kind of issues, particularly around the lungs, respiratory issues, nervous tension, and so on. And so you definitely, I would suggest that you take care of your health. If there's anything. If there's nothing, of course, don't worry about it. Certainly don't make me worry about it. Don't make me make you worry about it. I don't know you well enough to be able to help you understand, but just take it to heart, because if there's some underlying stress, you've got 7 months of this Mars there, and that's going to one way or another affect you. And this can also be tension and conflict with colleagues at work, or staff if you have staff, or even people that work for you at home. Some kind of issue that is brewing, some kind of tension that's there. Yeah, just keep keep aware of that, because it's something that is a long-lasting transit. Usually Mars just kind of zings through in about 6 weeks, and now we've got to really focus and really face whatever Mars is asking us to focus on right now. Your chart ruler, so your ruler, Capricorn, is Saturn, and that's in the second house. So that's money and resources and your stuff, and potentially income as well. It's all the money that you have, but by your own means, and how you accumulate money, how you relate to money. So Saturn in the second house, because it's in Aquarius, which it rules, it does do pretty well there. It means that you're kind of getting organized around your money, getting serious about it for sure. But Saturn tends to restrict and delay and block things. And so it looks like, for whatever reason, there is some kind of issue around money. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to suffer more than anybody else, but it just means that there's a lot of focus that is about getting serious about money. And that's really been since mid-December 2020. So this is not new either, but it continues all the way through till the 7th of March of 2023. So you still got quite a while. Saturn is retrograde at the moment, and it's going to go direct on the 23rd of October. So from that point on, and particularly from mid-January on, when it's out of its shadow range, then things will start to really take shape. And whatever efforts you've put in, whatever kind of hard work you've put in terms of organizing your finances, that will pay off probably only after January. So maybe a nice birthday present for some of you. The other aspect of this is that Saturn in the second house can have you feeling a bit blue or a bit down, a bit sort of unsure of yourself, maybe a little bit lacking in confidence. I would again have to see your natural chart, your birth chart, to be sure of that. But it's again passing. It's passing through. It's not permanent. So don't get down on yourself if that is the case. Don't focus unduly on negative things. Difficult in this world, I know, but currently, there's just so much stuff that we are focusing on that tends to draw our attention towards the worst of everything, the worst, the most negative, the most pessimistic. And to be honest, Capricorn, you tend to go there easily. So, don't do that to yourself. Don't put yourself in that position. Give yourself a break. You're definitely, with the fifth house full of activity, with Uranus there since May of 2018 and the North Node there since the beginning of this year. That is your house of joie de vivre and how you enjoy life. It can be love affairs as well, and just love in general, and creativity and your children and so on. So there's a lot of action there, but it seems to be restricted by this Saturn in the second house. So just double check that it's not this wounding that I was talking about, that's old childhood beliefs around insufficiency or something like that from childhood, emotional wounding. Or your sense of, whatever, something restricting you personally, if that feels that way to you. Don't let that be the thing that prevents you from enjoying your children or really just enjoying life. This is passing, by the way. So at the end of October and moving through November, certainly by December, this energy will no longer be as challenging as it is currently. But it is still there in the background, in a lesser way. And so definitely, take care of your personal well-being, and don't let that affect your creativity or your sense of what you'd like to achieve with your family and children, and perhaps business projects as well, entrepreneurial projects. So what else do I need to say here? Yeah, we've still got that at this full moon. We've got Mercury opposing Neptune that's coming through your 9th house and 3rd house axis. So Neptune is in the 3rd house of your skills and your everyday sort of community, the siblings in your life, your especially younger ones, and then your cousins and so on. So Neptune there, it's been there a long time, 11 years already. So it's perhaps telling you something about those relationships. Maybe they're starting to feel a little bit like less, you're less attached to all of that, for example, in the last decade or so, less connected to all of that. Doesn't mean that you don't want to be there. But now when, also, by the way, the 3rd house is communication, very importantly, normally ruled by Mercury, which is up there in the 9th. And in this opposition between Mercury and Neptune, we're not really super clear. So be careful that you too are being clear in relationship. You may have a sense that things are not very clear around you, but it might be your own process of thinking that's not very clear. Yeah, and certainly in terms of what you hear around you, what you believe, I'm cautioning everybody to take most things with a grain of salt and do a lot of research before jumping to any conclusions, remembering that there are no good guys and bad guys in this world. This is just the world that we have. It's full of nuance. There's no black or white out there. So just be warned not to fall into those traps of polarity. So I think that's it pretty much for you, Capricorn. It's not a bad full moon, but there's a lot of inner work, which is not your favorite place to be, honestly. But the inner work will be so enriching. It will inspire you in terms of relationships and career and everything else, which will, over time, you'll start to realize that the inner work was the obstacle to doing the outer work. So good luck with all of that, Capricorn, and I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, this full moon is happening in your 3rd house. You then have Chiron connecting to this moon in the 3rd house. So there might be something that's coming up here around issues of relationship through communication, business, for example. This is a house of commerce as well. There can be something here that you might want to reflect on in terms of how you've been engaging in your studies, or if you're a student, or in learning things or skills and so on. You might start to realize around this time that there's some skills that you really need to develop, but you may have felt inadequate. You may have, especially since May 2018, when Chiron moved into this part of your chart, you may have been feeling a little bit sort of less than capable. For example, thinking, I just don't have the skills, and how can I learn that? And of course, it depends on you as an individual, whether that was something that spoke to you or really resonated with you. But this full moon with Chiron there is showing us in the 3rd house that there's something here that you can learn from and overcome. Chiron is both the wounding as well as the healing. It's the agent for change, but it's where we understand that we can also be the things sabotaging ourselves. So we must find that inner pain, or the psychological issue that we believe we have. Even if it's some silly thing from childhood that still lingers, where we doubt ourselves, or we think we're stupid, or whatever the thing is, and it holds you back. This is the thing to really get clear on right now. It's absolutely not necessary. And now we also find Jupiter here in the 3rd house. So probably you've been really busy, really communicative, really traveling quite a lot as well. It's not it's been since middle of May, so it's not a new thing for you, but Jupiter is moving slowly out of that place. It's moving back into Pisces by the end of October. And as a result, you're going to feel much more energy around your money at the end of the month, around potentially your value as well. You might be reassessing something that was going on between January and mid-May that had you perhaps sensing your new value or new relationship to money, or a potential new income as well. And so that's coming back for 2 more months, roughly. And then by about the 20th of December, Jupiter will move back into that 3rd house where it is now, and give you lots of vibrant energy around planning for your work, for communications. So this is great for marketing, for example. This is really great if you want to write something, or if you want to present something, or if you have your own business. This is really good for commerce as well. So a really good time for learning skills on top of that. feeling confident about learning skills, if that's part of this story here. So the Chiron and Moon conjunction is opposing the Sun and Venus conjunction, which is part of what's making this full moon. And when Venus is next to the Sun, especially in Libra, she's really happy, except that when she's too close to the Sun, which she is right now, she doesn't shine as brightly. It's hard to see Venus, or she's what we call under the beams. And so we're not really seeing the best out of Venus. We're not getting the best out of her, but she's still a benefic, still giving us something positive. And that's happening in your house of your planning, where you see yourself going, your sense of what you're here for, in a way, your big vision house, where it's what you believe as well. We call it the house of God or the house of Dharma. What is your purpose here? What is it that you want to do? And so maybe there's something there that you're starting to have a sense about, and that realization is coming through this full moon, which is reflecting that in terms of how you think about things, how you might communicate that. It's a really nice energy there for you. I think Aquarius, of many of you of the signs, I think has a pretty easy time at this full moon. We also see that there's definitely something shaking up in your first house, and that has been quite dramatic since December 2020, when you had that conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in your first house, Saturn being your ruler, and Saturn is still in the first house. And as it's moving through the first house, we see Saturn there retrograde. Now it's retrograde until the 23rd of October. And I think you'll find that you may have slowed down a little bit. And if that's the case, then don't worry about that. When the chart ruler feels like it's a little bit sluggish and slow, and already it's Saturn, you might find that it's harder to get things done, or you're feeling maybe, again, less than ambitious or less than clear about what to be ambitious about. So remember what I said for Jupiter, as Jupiter is all about expansion and, reaching out and something beneficial happening, something bigger and more interesting, expanding in those areas. You're probably not going to see the same sort of open energy until that time, as both Saturn and Jupiter are moving forward. And that's not too far from now. So give it a month. Maybe even wait until the end of November. I think after the eclipses as well, certainly much more stability, much more understanding, clearer understanding of what to do. This is all the more so because your Saturn in your natal first house, house of self, has been in a challenging aspect for the last year and a half, or almost 2 years, to Uranus, which is your modern ruler. And that's in your fourth house, your fourth house of home. So potentially questions of literally, where do I live? How do I live? And in what conditions? And is that working for me? And then Saturn in the fourth is also for sure an emotional change. It's disruption, potentially lots of moving or desire to move at one stage or another in the course of that passage. And that's been since May of 2018 as well. So it's long-standing stuff. It's not new, but it's newly highlighted because of this tension between what you want, or who you are, how you want to engage in the world, in your life, coming into this new cycle that Saturn is starting in your first house, and then Uranus, which is shaking things up in a way that might be a bit confronting. For as much as Aquarius likes to think of themselves as very out there and very different, they're really conservative. So they are, that energy of, fixed air. It's not something that is super out there. There's certainly an edginess, and there can be a tendency to push things to the margins and be, really innovative, of course. But that's more in an intellectual way. And so when Uranus is going through the house of emotions, where it is in Taurus in the fourth house for you, emotions and psychological self, that's not such a comfort zone for Aquarius. And so there probably has been quite a lot of challenge around that. You've got Rahu there as well, the North Node, since January. And the combination of the two will have really shaken things up, and particularly in the summer, late July, mid-July to mid-August, let's say, certainly late July, early August. Something's shaking up there. Your career, what it is that you do in the world outside, is also shifting in a big way. So I think this also fits very much with your with that change that you're for sure undergoing with Saturn going through your first house. That's a revolution in and of itself, especially because it's your chart ruler. You also have Mars in the fifth house. Now that can be really great energy for creativity. It's very driven energy, very inspired energy. It's trining your first house, so it energizes you as well. That's really supportive of you. And when Mars goes through the fifth, there can also be quite a lot of energy around children or issues to do with children. Or it could be, if you're an entrepreneur, for example, that you're super driven, super busy there. Mars is there since 20th of August all the way through till the 25th of March. So it's a 7+ month transit. It's a really, really long time. It can also be that there can be tensions with children, or in terms of your sense of creativity, a bit of frustration. With Gemini there, it can also, have you a bit scattered, being kind of running around. Maybe you're running around for your kids, or it can be that you're running around for business and entrepreneurial reasons, or creative reasons. Nonetheless, it can have you really, really fizzle out. And so, you've got Cancer. Cancer is in your sixth house. Is ruled by the moon. And so that means that your sixth house is often changing. Your day-to-day life is really frequently changing. It's often difficult to find a structure. Things happen in cycles. Things happen, in that sort of lunar way where difficult to really pin anything down. You're constantly evolving. And that's actually one of the reasons that people consider Aquarius to be so different. It's because you find it hard to stick to a schedule. But that's okay. It just means that you need also downtime. Aquarius really needs to rest. Aquarius, because of that fluctuation in health and daily schedule that seems kind of permanently ongoing, it's something that you should factor in, that you want to tune into your body and give yourself a break every now and then. And so, especially with Mars going through the fifth, and then later after March, when Mars goes into the sixth, you'll be glad you did, I think. So I think that's it for this Aries moon for you, Aquarius. Have a good one, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Pisces, this full moon is happening in your second house of money. It's everything that supports you, from family to food to money, the money that you earn, the stuff that you have, all the nice stuff. And so there you've had Jupiter since mid-May, along with this full moon, which is showing you something about the condition of money and stuff in your life, maybe your attitude towards that. Jupiter is retrograde. That's your ruler, which is why I mentioned that. Jupiter is very important for Pisces, and so Jupiter is retrograde. It makes it very powerful, but doesn't give us the results that we would want to have. I say we because I've got a Pisces stellium, and so one as a Piscean would rather have Jupiter in good dignity and going forward to get things in terms of the flow that is natural to the Pisces. Lately things have been a bit stuck, and that can be also since August, because Jupiter went retrograde at the end of July. Just feeling a bit that things are not quite moving as you would have wanted them to. Jupiter will be all the way till the 28th of October, will continue to be in your second house of money. Then will retrograde back into the first house. So Pisces, Jupiter is coming back home to roost for about 2 months, almost 2 months, until the 20th of December, when it will go back into the second house. Either way, this is really nice for Pisces. Having a full moon in the second house can really illustrate money issues, personal value, personal worth issues. And then with this movement back and forth of your ruler, Jupiter, going back and forth between the first and second house, it is definitely a really constructive time in that regard. The Sun and Venus in the opposite house are showing that now there is some kind of support as well for you. But the Chiron on the moon is definitely an indication we can't ignore of some kind of self-sabotage or some kind of attitude or unconscious pattern around money or around self-worth that might be tripping you up. And so pay attention to that. It's really important. So whatever comes up for you over this weekend, so the full moon is considered to be full for about 3 days. So it's really, the day before, the day of, and the day after the full moon. It's all still very much in the scheme of the full moon. Pretty much as long as the moon is in Aries, that's going to be worth paying attention to in terms of this area of your chart, the money area, self-worth as well, and what to do about all those things. And so this is a really great opportunity to explore all of that. What am I doing that might be undermining my own capacity to be self-sufficient or to be well off? Pisces are let's say at crap with money, and not really interested, to be honest. And it's not really a thing that Pisces, depending, again, some other charts might have much more interest in money, but it's not an inherent aspect of the Piscean nature to be very motivated by money. And so sometimes we just have to, get stuff going because we're a bit crap about the money. And so we have to, maybe this is the thing that we're really, really seeing now. Wow, okay, I got to really sort this out. I've got to really sort this out. And especially with the Sun and Venus in the 8th house, it looks like that can turn out to work in your favor. So Venus in the 8th house is very good, but she's a bit close to the Sun to really give us all she's got, even if she's in Libra, in the sign that she rules, and giving us, her best. So it's great, but it's not as great as it will be when she separates a little bit more away from the Sun. So there is this question between yourself and others, where we, at this full moon, we have Mercury in the 7th house of others, and we have Neptune in the 1st house of self. And that opposition is a bit challenging. It's a wide opposition. It's about 5 degrees. That's a lot, but it's still really worth pointing out, because when there's a slow-moving planet that is so important in terms of, especially because it's the modern ruler for Pisces, so important in terms of the impact that it's having at a particular point, which is at this full moon, for example, you want to take note. You want to be sure that you're clear, that you are clear and above board, that you're being fair or honest with people. But also double check that people are actually seeing you correctly. Are people really aware of who you are? Are they projecting onto you? It looks in any case like there's some kind of communication or movement or action around relationships at this time that's going to be quite necessary. So it's not just that axis between Aries and Libra, which, by the way, I did a previous video explaining that in depth. So have a look at that if you're interested to go deeper into that Aries Libra axis and understand the real symbolism of this full moon. But it is also your 1st house, 7th house with this Neptune and Mercury opposition. It's not an easy one. You also have Saturn. Speaking of not easy, Saturn is in the 12th house. Saturn actually likes being in the 12th house. So it's a bit of a paradox, because it seems like such a challenging house. But one of the reasons that Saturn does very well there is because it puts order in the chaos, as it were. So Saturn going through the 12th house can have you at times feeling a little bit gloomy, maybe not like 100%, not up to speed, more psychologically or spiritually than physically. Saturn in the 12th house can also just have there's this kind of feeling of kind of looming something. Well, I don't know if I want to say doom, but just this kind of feeling of looming, I don't know, something not great. And it's been there since December 2020, and it's going to come out the 7th of March of 2023. So we're nearly there, but it'll already be much better after the 23rd of October. And at the 23rd of October, Saturn is then going to go forward again, stationing direct on the 23rd, going forward slowly. And then you'll start to see, especially from mid-January onwards, that there's a whole new perspective on all of the areas of, that encompass the 12th house, which is about our fears of death and loss and issues around loss. Saturn in the house of loss can also show us where we may have made some big mistakes in the past. And so these are things that the retrograde helps us to really experience. But once we clear that and move forward again, that tends to be hopefully lesson learned. And then you move into a completely different space. Now you have the North Node and Uranus conjunction in the 3rd house. So Uranus is squaring this Saturn that I just mentioned. And so there's a lot to do with thinking and communication, and that could also have something to do with going abroad, and that Saturn in the 12th house might be limiting that. It might be restricting your capacity to go to abroad, even if you want to, or it might put a lot more obstacles in your way if you need to go abroad, or the people that you used to visit are no longer available, or if it's for business purposes, you have fewer clients from abroad or something like that. Either way, that is squaring Uranus, and so something is quite quickly shifting in that. The third house is business, it's like commercial endeavors, marketing as well. This is all kinds of communication. It's all kinds of exchanges. And it's also siblings, by the way. So this could have something to do with siblings, some sort of issue around, especially younger siblings or cousins, for example, or even your neighbors and neighborhoods. Something big changing there, something new coming in there. The 12th house is also our ancestors, by the way. And so this shift, maybe something's coming to you as an instinct, as some kind of intuition about that, because you've got the Sun and Venus and Saturn in these two houses that we really think of when we think of transitioning and death and loss and challenges. So it could be something on your mind, as we go through this really challenging period in humanity. It's most likely on at least some of your minds. But maybe there's something here about having a new revelation around that, or a sudden realization around that. And that will be by the end of the month starting to clear. So the end of October will really start to shift a lot of things. Then very rapidly, as we go through November, shifts will start to be felt, much more fresh energy coming in after that. I'm going to do a video on the upcoming eclipses, so you'll have a sense of how that affects you directly. So I won't cover that too much right now. Finally, you've got Mars in your house of home. Looks like some kind of aggravation or intense busyness, or some kind of preoccupation, or some effort is required, some sort of busyness in terms of maybe having to reorganize your space or look for a new home. And certainly that's definitely showing up when Mars goes through the fourth house, especially for these 7 months that it will be there, right through till the 25th of March. Looks like there's a desire to move, or some kind of desire in any case to change your home. That can also be a bit combative at home. So if you are living with family, or with your own family, or with other people in a house, watch out, because Mars can have a very sharp tongue in Gemini, and you might cause some disruption, or be involved in some kind of disruption around your home circumstances. Don't write any nasty letters to your landlord, for example. Breathe, slow down, and just know that that's happening. The other part of this is that Mars in the fourth can signify a real deep sort of annoyance, aggravation, frustration that's psychological and emotional. So you might be really feeling all the negative stuff, deep, not being really sure. Why do I feel so impatient? Why do I feel so annoyed? Why do I feel so angry all the time? That's been since 20th of August. And as I mentioned, it goes right through till the 25th of March. So hang in there, definitely count to 10, Pisces, and things will definitely shift. I say as much as possible to all of you listening that waiting until after November to really start to put things moving forward, and having a sense that things are going to make sense to you at all in any way, it's probably wise to be extremely light and carefree, and responsive, in the sense that you can let things come and go in the next 2 months, and be very open to things changing in ways that you would never have imagined. Thanks for listening, Pisces. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video if you do, and I'd love to hear your comments. Thanks. Bye-bye.